No, it's not that it's swamp. It's just like the grass is going to be super wet from the rain. Right. So you can walk through there.
Today I am in Clearwater, Minnesota at the Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Cattle Farm, and they are having a big event called Regenerative Renegades. And they have invited producers, cattle producers, neighbors, and they're having speakers. We're going to have a tour of the farm if it doesn't pour rain again, and a big party tonight. So I just wanted to share that with you, little bits and pieces, and get you excited about the idea of lifetime grazed grass-fed beef. This is the owner of Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed brand and this farm.
Yes.
And just tell them what you're doing with your event today.
Well, we're doing a couple of things. One, we are celebrating our 15-year anniversary of a business.
I forgot that.
Yeah, that's first and foremost. Also, we are fortunate we have several dozen of our farmer producers here today learning and sharing information about how to raise excellent grass-fed beef. My saying is it's all about the soil, stupid. So
and getting the carbon back in there instead of up here, right?
That's right, yeah. And it helps absorb water.
That's so important.
It is. Every 1% of organic matter increase, we can absorb 20,000 more gallons per acre.
Oh my gosh.
Per acre.
Well, I see you have all your producers. Thank you so much. We'll talk later.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Matt Meyer.
Yeah, thank you.
My name's Walker Kerr. We're at Thousand Hills Farm out here in Clearwater, Minnesota, having a nice field day and conference with our producers. I think that cows can do better for the environment by going out there grazing on any kind of cropland, rangeland, going out there managing their grazing. You have to plan and make sure that they have time to just take one bite of the grass. But you don't want to eat too much, as then you would be shedding root mass and causing that plant to die back. You want that plant to be able to grow back stronger and then give that some proper rest. So you want to control and plan for what you're grazing, but also plan for your rest. It's more than just moving cattle through a couple pastures, is that it's all a part of a movement. We're trying to create a movement and create these communities so that people can go out there, be more profitable, have happier lives, and be able to create a nutrient-dense food, but all while also regenerating landscapes. And I did not grow up around cattle at all. I grew up playing tennis a lot, traveling around, and my mom was very into healthy foods, and so we were aware of this movement and trying to eat healthily, but we didn't think too much about grazing and farming and things like that. We knew kind of that it's important to feeding people. I didn't really think about it until I graduated from college, where I was going to go into the Peace Corps and study a little bit about ag and go into that, and I ended up going to Tomcat for a internship, and that's where I just did my first cattle drive, and I was scared out of my mind. I'd never been around large animals and just was like, this is terrifying but also awesome. This has just greatly impacted what I think about the world and what I think is important. But at the same time, I've always valued climate change and what I could do for it, and I never thought this is where I'd be at this point. But now it fits absolutely perfectly into where I always imagined I would be making an impact. And so it's one of those things where it has greatly changed, but at the same time, I'm not surprised that I ended up here.
This is Chris Kirsten, and he was just interviewing my son Walker, and I thought I should interview Chris because Chris works. Tell them where you work.
So I work with the Savory Institute. We're based in Boulder, Colorado. We have 40 field offices around the globe that we call Savory Hubs, and we work with ranchers and farmers in every context and continent and climate that you can imagine.
So how have you seen the whole interest change in holistic management?
There have been good people working on this for 30, 40 years. Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma, when it came out, was huge as a lightning rod, and consumers started to go, oh wow, there's more to the story about my food, and the entire game has changed. So we're now working with brands to source meat, dairy, wool, leather regeneratively. You could now go buy items from the store that are making the land better, coming from properties like this where we're at in Minnesota today, and we have verifiable empirical data that goes with those products and moves through the supply chain. So
all the flies that we hate, face flies, horn flies, lay their eggs in manure. So your manure management is going to determine whether or not you have fly pressure or not, just by how you handle the manure. The other thing we can do on fresh manure, we can find out by running a screen over it how long the little sticks are. And here they're very short. This cow was digesting quite well. You shouldn't see anything over 1/4 of an inch. It should almost be alchemically changed into something different than it was when it went in the front door. Chickens are the largest dung beetle in the world. They will spread those pies out to get the larvae. I raise pigs, and some people say, oh, I don't eat pork, that's a dirty animal. I go, do you eat chicken? And a lot of people don't really realize what chickens eat.
Yeah, I like a shovel for looking at soil because it gives you a pretty good feel for what's underneath the surface. And it allows you to look, smell, use all of your senses. What does a mushroom need to grow? Moisture, shade, because a lot of intense sunlight is pretty detrimental. And I'm talking about mycorrhizal fungi that trade the plant phosphorus for carbon and trade water for carbon. Habitat is extremely important for the soil biology. The #1 Nrcs soil health principle is cover. The soil is like an organism in some ways. Without its skin, it's going to die. There's a lot of different forms of carbon in different molecular forms, but I will go back to Selman Waksman, who wrote the book Humus in 1936, and he said that humus plays a leading role in the storage of solar energy on the surface of the earth. Wow. Well, there's a what I call a cognitive trap. You know, that you see a natural prairie and you plow it and plant wheat, you get an extraordinary crop sometimes. So let's do it again, and let's do it again, and let's do it again and again and again. And pretty soon you're locked into this thing where you need the plow to suppress the weeds that you're encouraging with that disturbance. And the fact that you've eliminated the perennial cover.
Glyphosate is a hydrocarbon, and the bugs can digest it, destroy it. And so they can take a field that's loaded with so much glyphosate you can't grow a weed, and spray it with a microbiological spray and just actually destroy the glyphosate. That's one way to speed up this so it doesn't take 10 years. You can do it in 2 years by adding the bugs in a jug. Or the raw milk. That's putting a substrate that is bug food to grow the microbes that have been destroyed here.
What is raw milk?
Raw milk is one of many biological stimulants that can stimulate. Peter's already seen a lot of life here. That big dung beetle there is one. If you go to an Acres conference, which I highly recommend, you'll see 20 people that are selling microbial products. And almost all of them have value. Same with compost tea. It's time consuming. I started to say it's real easy. It actually is time consuming to make compost tea, but it's basically free. You're just extracting the bugs out of the compost, spraying it on the field, low levels of it, doesn't take much, and you get the biology back that wasn't here when Matt bought this place.
Why aren't more people doing that?
Why aren't more people doing it? That's right. Well, I thought he had the answer. It's a lot easier to improve an inefficient, leaky system. Or it's not easier, but people have the illusion that we're going to make it more efficient or less destructive.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a good question. You go to Gabe Brown's place and you almost break down in tears. It's so beautiful what he's done to turn that farm around from nothingness to the Garden of Eden. Lushness. Yeah. We were there in August. It hadn't rained for 60 days on Gabe Brown's farm. They're in a drought pattern over there, horrible. We did this digging thing, we did it mechanically, and the corn this far down, the roots were going that far down, you could make a patty cake out of the soil. It was that moist. No irrigation whatsoever.
Oh my.
Hey guys, I've been told on a field like this with all of that Roundup glyphosate chelated in the soil that one of the problems is you go in and you put NPK on to reinvigorate it, and that phosphate is reactivating the glyphosate.
That's exactly right. They won't tell you that either.
Right.
Yeah, NPK will react. That's a very important statement you just made. Reactivate it so it's working again, it's killing again by chelating.
So how do you avoid that? I mean, back to the biologics?
Yeah, absolutely. Get rid of the NPK and start putting biology back on your farm. That's the answer.
What's the life of the glyphosate? Indefinite or?
Don Huber says they've checked it 24 years and it's still active. They won't tell you that either. They'll tell you it breaks down into daughter compounds in 24 hours. Some of which, of course, are more dangerous than glyphosate. And now glyphosate isn't working anymore. We have super weeds. So now they're resurrecting Agent Orange and all these other hideous chemicals now, putting 2,4-D, 2,4,5-T on farm ground, and people are going to eat it.
What about dicambia? Is that?
That's another wicked. That's an incredibly wicked chemical. Yep.
The biggest resource we have is this solar energy coming to Earth that's captured by plants and the water cycle. There's a lot of powerful things producers can do. Look at length of green season. That's level of photosynthesis above a threshold, how many days in the year? Because that's extremely important to feed the soil food web. As Chris mentioned, plant roots are secreting or putting carbon down into the root zone, often in liquid form, and that feeds the soil food web. If you're doing corn and soybeans, say 100 days, that's all the nutrition. What would your life be like if you only ate for 100 days during the year? Length of green season, which we'll have open source pretty soon, and I can run it on anybody's property if they give me the coordinates. Production per unit of input. That's very doable. Records you probably already have. So length of green season, production per unit of input, which has economic ramifications and infiltration.
By the way, this is related to infiltration.
Yeah.
You know, it's one crude way.
Yeah.
If this goes down, water is going to go down, and a root's going to go down.
Gabe Brown, for example, has a tile drain probe, which is maybe 4 feet long. On most of his soils, you can push that all the way to the.
Wow.
I have a friend who's working on his farm, Abe Collins, who's says basically they've done a lot of infiltration measurements, and they don't think there's ever going to be any runoff on Gabe Brown's farm.
The effective rainfall is how much you actually keep on your property.
Yes. And this infiltration can be somewhat of a guide for that, because if it takes a long time for an inch of water to soak in, chances are you're going to get a fair amount of runoff when the big storms come, right?
I was down in Inwood, Iowa last summer, and there was a toad strangler hit, and I was driving around, and the runoff, it reminded me of Starbucks mocha running off the fields. It was just, you couldn't see any water, all you could see was soil going by your eyes. It was so sad. You guys look around, how many young people are here? I mean, there's old guys like Jim Vanderpool, but he's almost gone. But it's really nice, Jim, that we have these young kids here. You've started the path, with what you've done. But then we found out the bad news is 80% of our 4% is imported beef from Brazil, Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, and Matt wants to support American farmers. And he doesn't want to support big corporations necessarily. He would like to see people like all of us do well. So that's what makes the premium. But the only way he can do that is to differentiate himself. That's the key word. So we differentiate ourselves into a product that people can trust, that it's not fake grass-fed. So that's just why I got into it.
Thanks, Will. Now we're going to bring Chris back up to the stage to kind of elaborate more on the Savory Hub program and also the Land and Market program that he alluded to earlier.
There's the voice of the land that's missing in the marketplace. And so we started looking at what could we do here. And so we thought about how we've been teaching ranchers as part of our curriculum since the late 70s how to measure the health of their land. So we're all about implementing new management strategies. If you implement a new management strategy, treat it like the scientific method. What's the first place that you're going to see that you're trending in the right direction or the wrong direction? And so we developed a protocol called biological monitoring, where we look at the land and say, are we trending towards building more carbon and more water infiltration and more biodiversity? So soil is our most important resource. It supports all life. And photosynthesis from green growing plants on that regenerating soil is what serves all the dividends to humanity. And the scariest thing that's happening right now in the world is we're losing 75 billion tons of soil every year as a result of how we're managing our natural resources. The first way to protect soil is keep it covered. Keep it covered when possible with growing plants. When you can't do it with growing plants, mulch, thatch, make sure material is laid down on that soil. That will dissipate as the raindrop comes down, it hits that dead vegetation or live vegetation first, it disperses, and it doesn't have the energy to wash away the soil like it would otherwise. So first step, keep the soil covered. Then through our management of our working landscapes, can we make that soil a sponge? Can we grow the organic matter in that soil? Organic matter is your smallest particle in the soil profile, which means it has the most surface area around it, which means it's the strongest sponge. It'll hold on to the most amount of water. The longer we hold on to water, the less that we have floods from that water going downhill, from taking dirt away with it and eroding. But it also extends our growing seasons. It means we're able to grow for a longer period of time, not tap into irrigation and things of that nature. There's a video, you can check this out, called Soil Carbon Cowboys by Peter Bick. And there's a very famous farmer named Gabe Brown who's been utilizing regenerative management and holistic management on his property for over a decade now. And they had a rain event a few years ago where they got 13 inches of rain in an afternoon. Not a puddle. Most of our surfaces in cities are non-permeable. So you think cement, asphalt, metal, they don't soak up water. So all of that water accumulates, it goes into storm drains, it ends up taking all sorts of toxins from the city with it, damaging local ecosystems, ends up wasted down in oceans. I've had a dream for a long time of bringing back green roofs. It has to be driven by people. You have to have enough people awake that are demanding this as part of their lifestyle, that people are able to move in that direction. And markets, I'm not knocking policy, but markets move exponentially faster than policy will. If people say, hey, I'm gonna buy a house that is in a place that has a green roof and solar panels and pay more for that, if there's an economic incentive there, we will figure it out. What I don't like to see is when people scrape away an existing ecosystem, a struggling ecosystem, and they put down volcanic rock and succulents, cactus species, and they go, oh, this is drought tolerant. The work that we do is all about creating the conditions for effective rainfall. So when the rain falls, when Gabe Brown got 13 inches, he was ready to get effective rainfall, to soak up every inch of that rainfall. What does that is roots in the soil that have that percolating capacity. And so when we scrape our landscaping away and put down, DG or crushed rock or whatever it might be, we're not creating the conditions for that soil to soak up water. So when the rains do come, we're actually further propagating the drought. We need soil cover, and we want the soil cover with biology. That is what allows us to soak in, even if you only get 2 inches of water a year, that's what allows us to soak it in. The real debate should be about whether we should be irrigating lawns or not. Where we live in California, lots of people are irrigating their lawns and they're using tremendous amounts of water. I think there's a deeper, more nuanced debate that has to happen around just saying a message of food, not lawns. I think we're seeing a lot of confusion from people, and my just biggest fear is, are people understanding that biology is what we have to value first and foremost?
My name is Stuart Lance, and I'm an intern at Camp Hill Village, Minnesota. When I graduated from high school, I didn't know quite what I wanted to study, but I knew I liked being outside, and I knew I liked being on farms and ranches. So one internship turned into 2 summer internships, and then I did 2 gap years, and while I was doing that, I lived and worked the second year on this farm where I learned about regenerative agriculture and high-density grazing, and I first saw the Alan Savory TED Talk, and I got to talk to the farmers about soil health and there's a 3-part cycle between the cow, the bacteria, and the grass roots. I did the thing that kind of seemed right next. I went to school, I went to college. I got out and realized that society was still facing the same questions, and as a member of society, I was still going to have to answer the same questions for myself. And building soil was still fascinating. The idea that you can stockpile sunlight and water in a patch of ground just by managing it right was fantastic. And so I'm back. I've found myself a summer internship, and I love it.
So how do you think it's gone, Phil?
I think it's been a great day so far. We started off pretty early here with a downpour, but considering what happened this morning, we're having a great turnout, and I think a lot of people are having fun, and we're now transitioned to the evening, which should be the fun part, even more fun part, and even though the morning was fun too.
Well, it seemed like everybody was really engaged.
It was. I think we had a great set of speakers that engaged the group pretty well, and on an array of topics, and they all were excited to be here and learn and ask good questions and be out in the pasture. So at the moment, we're all running around making sure things are happening, but as we look back tomorrow and next week and in the future, everyone will be excited. I think this will help be a part of the growth of the company.
Well, I'm jumping in here because this is my boy. Love you. Go to work, go to work. It is so exciting to be at this event and to see how many people are interested in regenerative agriculture. If you enjoyed this video, maybe you'll enjoy these. We just had a fantastic meal, by the way, and it was produced by Chow Girls Killer Catering. They source everything locally and it's all organic. Mighty fine. And of course we had Thousand Hills meat.
Around here, we're going from